Let me tell you a simple truth most people learn too late. The moment you start explaining yourself, you start giving your power away. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how the strongest people in the room say the least? They don't rush to clarify. They don't defend every move. They don't try to be understood by everyone. Because confidence does not speak in paragraphs, it speaks in presence. Today, I want to show you why explaining too much makes you weaker, and how silence, clarity, and self-respect quietly make you unstoppable. The first key point is that power does not beg to be understood. And this truth is uncomfortable because it goes against how most of us were conditioned. From a young age, we learned to explain ourselves so we wouldn't get in trouble, so we wouldn't be misunderstood, so we wouldn't be rejected. Over time, that habit didn't disappear, it grew roots. Now, every time someone questions you, doubts you, or looks at you with confusion, something inside feels the urge to fill the silence. You start adding reasons, background, emotion, logic, but notice this carefully. The moment you feel the need to explain, your energy shifts. You move from standing in your truth to standing on trial, and power cannot exist in a place where you are trying to prove your worth. Think about the people you naturally respect. Not the loud ones, not the dramatic ones, but the ones whose presence feels solid. They don't rush to justify their choices. They don't stack words on top of words hoping to sound convincing. They make a decision. That doesn't mean they don't care. It means they trust themselves. When you over-explain, you silently tell the world that your decision needs backup, that your inner voice alone is not strong enough. But when you speak with calm certainty and stop, you signal something deeper. You signal that you are rooted, not shaken by reactions. Over-explaining often comes from a quiet fear we don't like to admit. The fear of being seen as wrong. The fear of being misunderstood and left behind. The fear that if people don't fully get us, they might withdraw love, respect, or opportunity. So we talk more. We clarify again. We soften our words. We repeat ourselves in different ways. But power doesn't grow in fear. It leaks through it. When you explain too much, you give people the steering wheel of your self-worth. Their nod becomes validation. Their confusion becomes your responsibility. Slowly, without realizing it, you train yourself to feel stable only when others agree. There is a quiet strength in allowing yourself to be misunderstood. Not out of arrogance, not out of ego, but out of self-trust. You don't owe everyone access to your inner reasoning. You don't owe everyone a guided tour of your mind. Some people will understand you instantly. Some will never understand you at all, and neither determines your value. When you stop trying to control how you are perceived, you reclaim mental space. That space becomes clarity. That clarity becomes calm, and calm, more than anything else, makes people feel your authority without you saying a word. Notice how explanation often grows longer when you feel smaller inside. When you are unsure, your sentences stretch. You add details hoping one of them will land. But when you are grounded, your words naturally shorten. You don't need decoration. You don't need emotional padding. You state what is true for you, and you stay there. It's the difference between knocking gently and banging on a door, hoping someone lets you in. One comes from trust. The other comes from desperation. There is also wisdom in knowing that understanding cannot be forced. You can explain something perfectly, with patience and care, and still be misunderstood. At that point, continuing to explain is not communication, it's self-abandonment. You are bending your spine to fit someone else's expectations. Power, real power, has a straight back. It doesn't argue with every raised eyebrow. It doesn't chase agreement. It accepts that clarity on your side is enough, even when clarity on their side never arrives. When you stop over-explaining, something subtle changes in how people respond to you. Conversations slow down. Tippy. Your words carry more weight. Others start choosing their responses more carefully because they sense that you are not easily moved. This isn't about being silent all the time. It's about knowing when to stop. About trusting that what you said is sufficient. About allowing your presence to finish the sentence your mouth didn't. And in that space between what you said and what you didn't, you begin to feel something steady, something grounded, something that no amount of explanation would ever give you. The second key point is that over-explaining does not come from kindness, it comes from fear. And this is hard to accept because most people see themselves as considerate, thoughtful, and well-meaning. You tell yourself you're just being clear, just being polite, just trying to avoid confusion. But underneath that explanation is a quiet tension in your chest, a need to be seen a certain way, a hope that if you say enough, no one will think badly of you. Fear often wears the mask of good intentions. It sounds gentle, reasonable, even caring, but its root is still fear, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood and left alone with your truth. If you listen closely to your own voice when you over-explain, you can hear it. The pace speeds up. The sentences pile on. You start filling every small pause, as if silence itself might turn against you. That is not kindness speaking. That is your nervous system trying to protect you. It's the same instinct that makes people smile when they're uncomfortable or laugh when they're unsure. Over-explaining is a form of self-defense, not generosity. You're trying to control how the other person feels about you, because somewhere inside you believe their reaction decides your safety. True kindness is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need to be accepted immediately. When kindness speaks, it leaves room. Over-explaining does the opposite. It crowds the moment. It overwhelms the listener and drains the speaker. And most importantly, it quietly teaches you to doubt yourself. Each extra sentence sends a message inward that what you said before was not enough, that your original thought lacked value unless supported, softened, or dressed up. Over time, this habit doesn't just affect how you speak, it reshapes how you see yourself. Many people learn this pattern early in life. You explained yourself to avoid punishment. You explained yourself to keep peace. You explained yourself to stay loved. That strategy worked then, so your mind kept it. But what once protected you can now limit you. As an adult, you don't need to narrate your worth to earn respect. Yet the body remembers old rules longer than the mind does. So even when you are capable, strong, and clear, your instincts may still whisper, explain more, just in case. That whisper is not your intuition. It's an old survival habit asking to be questioned. Fear-based explaining also creates an imbalance in relationships. When you constantly justify yourself, you place others above you without realizing it. Their comfort becomes more important than your clarity. Their understanding becomes more valuable than your peace. Slowly, you begin to shrink your truth to make it easier to digest. You edit yourself mid-sentence. You apologize for choices that don't need apology. This doesn't make you kinder, it makes you smaller. And people don't feel closer to you. Because of it, they simply get used to having more access to you than they've earned. There is relief in recognizing this pattern, because what is learned can be unlearned. You don't have to cut your words sharply or become distant. You simply pause before adding the extra sentence. You notice the urge to explain and ask yourself one honest question. Am I sharing because it serves the moment, or because I'm afraid of how I'll be seen? That pause is powerful. In that pause, fear loses momentum. You begin to feel the difference between clarity and compulsion, between openness and overexposure. As you practice this, something subtle shifts inside you. You start trusting that your first response is enough. You realize that people who respect you don't need long explanations, and people who don't respect you won't be convinced by them anyway. You learn that discomfort is not danger, and misunderstanding is not a failure. With each moment you resist the urge to over-explain, you build quiet confidence. Not the kind that announces itself, but the kind that settles into your voice, your posture, your presence, changing the way you relate to the world from the inside out. The third key point is that clarity is stronger than explanation. And this idea sounds simple until you really sit with it. Clarity doesn't mean saying more, it means saying what matters and stopping there. Most people confuse clarity with detail, but detail often hides confusion. When you are clear, your words feel clean, almost sparse. There is no excess weight to them. They land and settle. Explanation, on the other hand, keeps moving. It keeps adjusting itself, hoping to arrive somewhere stable. Clarity stands still. It knows where it is. And when you speak from that place, people feel it even before they understand it. Think of clarity like a straight path through a dense forest. It doesn't wander. It doesn't apologize for being narrow. It simply goes forward. Explanation is the opposite. It circles, it doubles back, it points at landmarks along the way to make sure no one gets lost. But the more you guide, the more you reveal that you're unsure of the direction yourself. When you are clear, you trust that those who are meant to walk with you will find the path. You don't need to escort everyone step by step. You don't need to convince them the path is real. You just walk it. Clarity also begins inside, long before it reaches your mouth. If your thoughts are tangled, your words will be too. Over-explaining is often a sign that you haven't fully decided yet. You're thinking out loud, hoping the listener will help you arrive somewhere. But when you take time to sit with your decision internally, something settles. You may still feel nervous, but you are no longer scattered. From that place, you can speak one sentence that carries the weight of 10. That sentence doesn't need backup because it came from alignment, not impulse. There is a quiet relief in choosing clarity. You stop adjusting your message mid-sentence based on facial reactions. You stop watching yourself speak. Instead, you speak once and listen. This creates balance. Conversation becomes a shared space, not a stage. People sense this immediately. They may not agree with you, but they recognize that you are not trying to sell your truth. You are simply stating it, and that steadiness makes even disagreement feel respectful. Clarity requires courage because it removes hiding places. When you explain too much, you can blame confusion on complexity. When you are clear, you stand exposed. Your words are simple enough to be accepted or rejected without confusion. That vulnerability can feel risky, especially if you've learned to protect yourself with layers of reasoning. But clarity is not recklessness. It is honesty without armor. It says, "This is where I stand, and I can remain here even if you don't join me." As you practice clarity, you notice how it changes your inner dialogue as well. You begin to think more cleanly. You question yourself less. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head, adding imaginary explanations to imaginary objections. Your mind becomes quieter because it no longer needs to prepare defenses. You trust that whatever needs to be said will be said simply, and whatever is not received is not yours to carry. That mental space is powerful. It gives you energy back. Clarity also teaches others how to communicate with you. When you are clear and concise, you set a tone. People learn that long justifications are unnecessary around you. Conversations become more honest, more grounded. You are no longer pulled into endless clarifications or emotional negotiations. You remain present without being entangled. The Sant one. And over time, this way of speaking becomes part of who you are. Not a technique, not a strategy, but a natural expression of self-trust that continues to deepen every time you choose clarity over explanation. The fourth key point is that not everyone deserves access to your reasons. And this realization can feel unsettling because it challenges the idea that being open always means being good. Many of us were taught that transparency is a virtue in every situation, that explaining ourselves fully makes us honest and fair. But wisdom is knowing that openness without discernment becomes leakage. Your reasons carry your inner world. They hold your values, your priorities, your experiences. When you give them away too easily, you don't become more understood, you become more exposed. There is a difference between sharing and overexposing, and that difference is self-respect. Sharing is intentional. It happens where there is trust, safety, and mutual regard. Overexposing happens when you feel pressured to justify yourself to people who have not earned that level of access. Every time you explain your choices to someone who listens with judgment rather than curiosity, you hand them a piece of your inner space. Over time, this creates exhaustion because your mind is constantly reopening doors that should have remained closed. Your reasons are not public property. They are not something that must be presented every time someone raises an eyebrow or asks a question that carries more doubt than care. Some questions are not invitations to understand. They are quiet challenges. When you answer those with long explanations, you lower yourself into a debate that was never meant to be fair. Discernment teaches you to recognize the difference. You begin to sense when a question is rooted in respect and when it is rooted in control. Think of your reasons like the foundation of a house. You don't invite everyone to inspect it. You don't pull up the floorboards every time someone is curious. The house stands because the foundation is solid, not because it is constantly on display. When you keep explaining your reasons, it's like lifting the structure to prove it won't collapse. But real strength doesn't announce itself. It allows the structure to speak through stability, not demonstration. Learning to withhold explanation is not about being secretive or cold. It's about understanding that boundaries are a form of clarity. When you say less, you are not being unclear, you are being selective. You are choosing where your energy goes. You are deciding who gets to step closer and who stays at a respectful distance. This choice is not selfish, it is necessary. Without it, you become emotionally available to everyone and deeply connected to no one. There is also growth in accepting that some people will never understand your reasons, no matter how clearly you explain them. They don't share your values, they don't see the world through your experiences, and that's okay. When you stop trying to bridge every gap, you save yourself from constant self-translation. You allow your life to move forward without dragging everyone along for approval. That freedom is quiet but powerful. As you begin to protect your reasons, something shifts in how you carry yourself. Your posture changes. Your voice steadies. You no longer feel the urge to defend every decision because you are no longer seeking permission to be yourself. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it doesn't. And in that balance, You start to feel a deeper sense of ownership over your life, as if you have finally reclaimed the right to move forward without explaining every step you take. The fifth key point is that silence makes people pay attention, and this is difficult to believe in a world that rewards noise. We are surrounded by constant talking, constant reacting, constant explaining. Silence feels risky because it leaves space, and space can feel like loss of control. Yet silence is not emptiness. It is presence without decoration. When you stop filling every moment with words, people start to notice what remains: your calm, your confidence, your certainty. Silence shifts the focus from what you are saying to who you are being. There is a difference between being quiet and being withdrawn. Silence, when chosen, is active. It holds weight. It gives your words borders so they don't spill everywhere. Think about how music works. The notes matter, but the pauses between them are what give the song its shape. Without silence, sound becomes noise. In the same way, when you speak without pauses, your message loses form. When you allow silence, each word gains gravity, and people lean in. Many people are used to others rushing to explain, defend, or react. When you don't, the pattern breaks. The conversation slows. The other person becomes more aware of themselves. They start filling the space you left open. This isn't manipulation, it's awareness. Silence acts like a mirror. It reflects energy back to its source. And in that reflection, people often reveal more than they intended, while you remain grounded and intact. For those who over-explain, silence can feel like holding your breath underwater. Your mind races with imagined outcomes. What if they misunderstand me? What if they think I'm wrong? What if they walk away? But notice this, the urge to speak is often about soothing your own discomfort, not serving the moment. When you stay silent through that discomfort, you teach yourself that you can survive it. You realize that nothing collapses. The world doesn't end. In fact, something inside you steadies, as if a deeper part of you has taken the lead. Silence also communicates trust. It says, I trust myself enough not to rush. I trust the moment enough to let it unfold. I trust you enough to process without interference. This kind of trust is rare, and because it's rare, it feels powerful. People may not label it that way, but they feel it. They sense that you are not desperate for control or validation. You are present, alert, and unhurried. That presence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Over time, choosing silence reshapes how you experience conversations. You begin listening more deeply, not just to words, but to tone, pauses, and unspoken tension. You respond rather than react. You speak when something meaningful needs to be added, not just when space feels uncomfortable. This changes the rhythm of your interactions. You become someone whose words matter because they are not constant. Each time you speak, it feels intentional. As silence becomes familiar, it stops feeling like a gap and starts feeling like a foundation. You no longer fear being overlooked because you understand that attention drawn by noise is shallow. The attention drawn by presence is lasting. In silence, you discover that you don't need to announce your strength. You allow it to be felt. And in that quiet space, where you once rushed to explain, you begin to experience a deeper kind of authority, one that settles into the room without asking for permission. The sixth key point is that calm confidence needs no defense. And this idea challenges the way many people think strength should look. We often associate confidence with sharp replies, fast answers, and the ability to win arguments. But true confidence is quieter than that. It doesn't tense up when questioned. It doesn't rise in volume when challenged. Calm confidence stays steady because it is not built on proving anything. It is built on knowing. And when you know who you are and why you stand where you stand, there is nothing to defend. Defense only appears when something inside feels threatened. Notice how defensiveness feels in the body. The shoulders tighten, the breath shortens, the mind races ahead, preparing counterpoints before the other person has even finished speaking. That state is exhausting because it keeps you on edge, always ready for attack. Calm confidence feels different. The body stays relaxed, the breath stays deep. You listen fully, not to respond, but to understand. And even if you disagree, you don't rush to protect your position. You allow it to exist without armor. That lack of tension is what gives your presence weight. Defensiveness is often misunderstood as passion. People say, I'm just standing up for myself. But standing up doesn't require fighting every shadow. When you defend too quickly, you reveal that your sense of self is fragile, dependent on immediate validation. Calm confidence doesn't rush because it trusts time. It knows that truth doesn't need to shout to survive. It can sit quietly and still remain intact. This trust in time is powerful because it removes urgency from your reactions. When you stop defending yourself, conversations change in unexpected ways. People either soften or expose themselves. Mentee. She's there the battle to fight and lower their guard. Others may push harder, uncomfortable with your steadiness. But either way, you remain centered. You are no longer dragged into emotional sparring. You observe instead of absorb. That distance doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You can choose when to engage and when to let things pass without attaching your worth to the outcome. Calm confidence also changes how you see criticism. Instead of treating every comment as a threat, you treat it as information. You listen without flinching. If something is useful, you take it. If it isn't, you leave it behind without resentment. Defensiveness clings to every word, trying to fix, correct, or counter. Confidence filters. It doesn't need to prove superiority. It doesn't need the last word. It understands that silence can be a form of agreement with yourself. There is a deep freedom in realizing you don't have to correct every misunderstanding. Some people will misjudge you. Some will project their own fears onto you. Calm confidence allows that to happen without internal collapse. You don't chase their version of you. You stay rooted in your own. This is not indifference, it is emotional maturity. It's knowing that your inner stability matters more than external approval, and that defending every perception only keeps you tied to it. As this calm confidence grows, it becomes visible in subtle ways. Your voice slows down. Your words become fewer but stronger. Your reactions become intentional rather than automatic. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head because you no longer expect attacks everywhere you go. Life feels less like a battlefield and more like a path you're walking at your own pace. And the more you embody this calm, the more people sense that you are not easily shaken. Not because you resist pressure, but because you no longer need to defend what is already solid within you. The seventh key point is that the strongest response is often no response, and this truth feels almost impossible in moments when your emotions are activated. When something touches your pride, your past, or your sense of fairness, the urge to reply rises fast. Your mind searches for the perfect sentence, the one that will set the record straight, the one that will make the other person finally see you. But in that urgency, you give away your center. No response is not weakness, it is restraint. It is the ability to feel the pull to react and still choose stillness. Most reactions are not conscious decisions, they are habits. They come from old patterns of needing to be heard, seen, or validated. When you respond immediately, you are often responding to a memory, not the present moment. Silence interrupts that cycle. It creates a pause between impulse and action. In that pause, you return to yourself. You stop letting external triggers decide your inner state. This is where power lives, not in winning the moment, but in not losing yourself inside it. No response can feel like unfinished business. The mind hates open loops. It wants closure, resolution, acknowledgement. But real closure doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it comes from accepting that not every situation deserves your energy. When you stop responding to what drains you, you stop feeding it. Attention is fuel, reaction is permission, silence withdraws both. And without fuel, many conflicts dissolve on their own, not because they were solved, but because they were no longer fed. There is also clarity in no response. When you step back, you see situations more accurately. You notice patterns instead of moments. You see who is seeking understanding and who is seeking control. You recognize when a conversation is about truth and when it is about dominance. Responding to everything keeps you inside the noise. Not responding lifts you above it. From there, your choices become cleaner, less emotional, more aligned with who you want to be rather than who the moment tries to put you into. No response is a boundary without explanation. It says, "This does not deserve access to me." That boundary is powerful because it doesn't argue. It doesn't justify itself. It simply exists. And boundaries that don't speak often speak the loudest. They teach people how to treat you without a lecture. They reveal that your time and energy are not unlimited, and that you value them enough to protect them. Learning when not to respond takes practice because silence can feel vulnerable. You may worry about being misunderstood or judged, but with time, you realize that people who respect you will not demand constant reactions. They will feel your presence even in your quiet. And those who push for reactions are often uncomfortable with your self-control. Your silence reflects something they haven't mastered yet, the ability to remain steady without engagement. As this understanding deepens, you begin to experience a new kind of freedom. You are no longer pulled into every emotional current. You choose your battles carefully, and most of the time, you realize you don't need to fight at all. Your nervous system calms, your mind clears, and in that calm, you find strength that doesn't need expression to exist. You stop proving, stop defending, stop reacting. You remain rooted, and that rootedness becomes your quiet, unspoken response to the world. As you carry this forward, remember that strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up as restraint. Sometimes it shows up as a pause. Sometimes it shows up as choosing not to explain what already feels true inside you. You don't need to sharpen your voice to be heard, and you don't need to convince everyone to stand firmly where you stand. The ground beneath you is solid even when no one else notices it. There will be moments when silence feels uncomfortable, when clarity feels risky, when not responding feels like you're letting something slip away. But what you're really doing is holding on to yourself. You're choosing steadiness over noise, self-respect over approval, presence over performance. And that choice changes how you move through the world. It changes how you listen, how you speak, how you decide. You begin to realize that power is not about control, it's about alignment. When your thoughts, words, and actions come from the same quiet place within you, life feels less like a constant negotiation. You stop explaining your value and start living it. You stop reacting to every ripple and start moving with intention. Carry this understanding gently. Let it settle into your daily interactions, your silences, your decisions, not as a rule to follow, but as a way of being. And as you step back into your life, know this: you don't need to prove your strength, you only need to protect it. When you do, everything else begins to fall into place, quietly and naturally, exactly as it should.